afternoon. Thanks for turning up for such a horrible day. I didn't realise Tanddaearol was so important to everybody. There we are. War underground on the Western Front. And specifically, we're going to look at some the Pontypridd miners who joined the Royal Engineers tunneling companies in the First World War. It's a strange thing. You look at memorials in the park and you think, what's that guy there? Sapper. Well, engineers, boy, isn't it? When you start looking at them, you think, oh, tunneler. And suddenly, the whole unknown story comes to light. Well, I think so, anyway. We'll talk about that a bit later on. Okay. I broke it down just to give a little flavour of the background at the start of prior to the First World War, the way of introduction was about. The South Wales coalfield, it's gone now, isn't it? It's in some of our memories, so they're all the ones around here. But then we look at the start of the First World War, answering the call, digging in on the Western Front, and the formation of the tunneling companies. We look at that. And then we look specifically at some of the Pontypridd tunnellers that were involved. It's an evolving story. I've identified 34 tunnellers so far. I've done lots of research on all of them, but there's about 8 or 9 which have proven very, very elusive. But I'm determined to get to the bottom of them, just to give a pen picture of each and every one of them. I'll talk about that in a moment. Then we have a little work of the tunneling companies. Believe you me, theirs was an awful war. Very hard. Then we look at the end of the war and coming home. And then at the end we draw some conclusions about the whole thing. So, we've talked about the story of the miners from Pontypridd specifically. They either lived, worked, or were born in Pontypridd. That's the criteria I've used. Some of them enlisted in Pontypridd, others didn't. But they're all associated with Pontypridd. It's based on original research, as far as I know. There's little snippets here and there, but not a collective thing for the whole thing. So it's a new volume of work, hopefully. And with a bit of luck and a fair wind, we'll have a book later on. I'm not certain the book yet, it's not finished. But that's the idea, just to commemorate them in some way. The tale of great heroism and sacrifice, and the significant number wounded or killed. Of the 34, 17 were killed. Exactly half of those were killed. Most of the information has not been researched before, as I say. So this is their story. So, the South Wales coalfield, it's gone totally now. But when you think about it, the South Wales coalfield was the biggest coalfield in the UK, just prior to the start of the war. At its peak of production in 1913. The largest coalfield in the UK. It employed almost 250,000 miners, men and boys, working at over 600 collieries. All the valleys were full of pits. It's difficult to imagine now, the whole thing like that. At its peak production in 1913, again, just prior to the start of the war, it produced nearly 57 million tonnes of coal, which is around 20% of the UK's total. Good, high quality steam coal, of course, much in demand. So, and there's the railway system we once had. You're on about the metro and everything now, I mean, and all the rest. But look what we have. Primarily to transport the coal down to the docks. We had all that to support the coal industry, to get it out. At the time, the coal industry dominated life in the valleys. It's hard to imagine that. indeed king. High demand for steam coal, which is the best in the world, and on all the Royal Navy, Admiralty lists and everything else. Sold around the world. And it's difficult to imagine, like the valley communities were built up around the collieries in the valleys like that. Oh, sorry. I'm jumping around here. Right, that's the background. We're a very mining community. Miners are everywhere. 250,000 in South Wales. The start of the First World War, the identification of the causes still being debated, but the catalyst, without a shadow of a doubt, was the killing of the Franz Ferdinand, who was the heir to the Austrian Empire throne at Sarajevo by the Bosnian Serb governor of Ffrynt. He tried to kill him half an hour or so ago. Before that, he missed. That didn't work. He eventually caught up with him. Doesn't say much for their security, but there we are. And the newspaper headline said, the assassination may lead to war, which inevitably did. That was just the thing to kickstart the whole thing off. So we don't go into all the ramifications. When you think of it, there's all these different empires that we had in Europe, all these different alliances. If you invade him, I'm going to fight you. There was all these different alliances that were very complicated. With the Russian Empire over here on the right hand side, the German Empire at the north, Austro-Hungarian Empire, and then you say, why are we fighting in Turkey? Well, there's the Ottoman Empire, Gallipoli and everything else done there. So it's all a question of alliances. If you invade him, then they will war with you. It's quite complicated. So, what did Germany do? March straight through Belgium. Britain says, withdraw, or we have this state of war. But of course they totally ignored it, the Germans, and carried on regardless. We had a treaty with Belgium to protect them, so that's how we got involved. You know, people, historians argue about it now, we needn't have got involved at all in the First World War, really, but then we did. So the outcome of that was Great Britain declares war on Germany on the 4th of August. So we're now in a state of war. Answering the call. The British Army was about 250,000 regulars. That's all we had. So that wasn't got enough people to fight a war. So they did a huge enlistment thing. Posters appeared everywhere. The government needed to recruit more and more people, obviously. Propaganda campaign was very, very successful as well. Posters told men it was their duty to join, that they would feel good if they did, and guilty or embarrassed if they didn't. So no pressure, you know. It was a really, really very, very efficient enlistment propaganda campaign. Kitchener pointing his finger over everywhere he went to join up. And after the opening of war in August 1914, Britain recruited a huge volunteer citizens army. In just 8 weeks, over 750,000 men in Britain joined up. It's just like that. Would it happen today? I don't know. Probably not. Every volunteer had to undergo a series of medical and fitness tests before being accepted as a soldier. In Wales, we joined the Welsh regiment and see the world. That's what they did for them. He's happy and satisfied. This was propaganda campaign was everywhere. Much more posters everywhere. So there. So it was very, very successful. Men felt proud, the prospect of fighting for their country, and queued outside the recruitment offices all over Britain to join up. Posters of the newspaper reports tried to encourage other men who could go to volunteer. The government wanted as many men as possible to join the forces willingly. This is to be forced conscription, of course. Many also believed, of course, if you're all over by Christmas, let's get out there now. I'll have a couple of months before it's all over. How sadly wrong they were. Scenes like this were repeated all over the country. People clamouring to join up. At the start of the war, it was people between 19 and 36. Later on in the war, that went down to 18 and a bit older. And at the end of the war, they were taken up in their 50s. But initially, it was like that. The alacrity with which miners volunteered to fight in 1940 shouldn't really come as no small surprise. War was an escape from the black world of everyday perilous drudgery. And they already had a shaking hands acquaintance with death. In 1913, some 1,753 miners were killed at work. That's in 1 year. Which included 881 in South Wales. Over half were killed in South Wales. South Wales coalfield was the most dangerous coalfield in the UK by a long way. And a further 178,000 were injured. You know, their conditions at the time were appalling. The army welcomed them, of course, with open arms. Courtesy of their work at the coalface, colliers were physically strong, were familiar with discipline, and were used to teamwork. They already had the sense of camaraderie that was necessary when working together underground. They knew that their lives depended on each other. This was something, of course, that could not be taught. So no wonder the army welcomed them with open arms. So, war has begun. The first quarter of the war going nowhere. They started to dig in. The open warfare and flanking movement of the autumn of 1940 had ceased as both sides just faced each other. So, both sides using artillery extensively, shelling each other, and frontal assaults, just not doing anything at all to progress the war. This is the front, just all the way from the North Sea in Belgium, on the Belgian coast, right to the Swiss border. That was the front line between the Allies and Germany. By April 1915, the front line stretched 400 miles. From the Belgian coast to the Swiss border, the British Expeditionary Force front line stretched initially for a mere distance of only 20 miles of that. But as more men were enlisted and came in, that was extended to 60 miles. But these 60 miles were brutal miles, no question about that. Densely packed with troops on both sides and of almost non-stop attack and counter-attack. Two very equal forces fighting each other. Trenches, which is what they look like. Duckboards on the bottom, because the bottom will be soaking wet with water and mud. Keep your head down there, a couple of firing stuff to fire over there, and then no man's land between the trenches. After the build-up of forces in 1915, the Western Front became a stalemate, struggle between equals, to be decided by attrition. Frontal assaults and their associated casualties became inevitable on both sides, because the continuous trench lines had no open flanks. So they knew we were coming, we knew they were coming as well, and they just machine gunned each other to death. For much of the First World War, the Western Front maintained almost static, didn't go anywhere. We made a little gain, lost it. They made a little gain, they lost it. With both sides killing each other's men, but otherwise making little progress. So, in order to make progress and break that stalemate, initiatives, different initiatives and units were needed to try and break that deadlock. They just couldn't go on like that for time and order. And one of these, of course, was the tank. It came out in 1916, fighting like with the Germans, but however that one was successful. They all got bogged down and tangled up in the wire and goodness knows what. So we kept with the formation of the tunneling companies. Prior to 1915, there was no need for any tunneling companies. However, the Germans, they got their retaliation in first. They were the first ones to mine under the British lines. They did that in December 1914, when they blew up the Ffrynt Brigade, the Sikh regiments, with huge casualties, with heavy loss of life, and became a major cause for concern amongst the army. You know, gosh, if they can do that then, they can continue doing that. So the response was, we set up some tunneling companies, because they obviously have some already to do what they've done. So tunneling companies 170 to 178, they were the first formed from March 1915. By mid-1916, a further 17 had been formed. You can see how important it is. It starts off small, but grows exponentially to do that. And we had 25,000 tunnellers employed then throughout the front, doing various works. Tunnelling companies was also comprised of 5 officers, with a major or a captain in charge, in command, and 269 sappers, aided by temporary attached infantrymen. Welsh miners were prominent amongst those men who volunteered to undertake this dangerous and difficult task. It is estimated that 4,500 South Wales miners served as tunnellers, of whom over 200 were killed in action. Welsh miners served in every single tunnelling company, with the greatest number serving in 254th Tunnelling Company, which is the tunnelling company that won the VC. But it wasn't a Welshman, it was a Yorkshireman. That's another sport. Australia, New Zealand and Canada, they got involved as well, and they formed their own tunnelling companies. Australia was 5, New Zealand was just the 1, and Canada was 3. So we are quite a force now, tunnelling companies, quite organised. The importance of tunnellers to the war effort is shown by the following rates of pay. This is interesting. A tunneller was paid 6 shillings, that's 30 pence a day. You think, oh, that's equivalent to a lieutenant. A tunneller's mate was paid 1 shilling and 6pence, plus another supplement of 1 shilling, so he was having half a crown a day. The poor old infantryman was on 1 and 2pence a day. 6 pence a day, so you can see that's quite a carrot there as well, you know. I'm an infantryman, I might become a tunneller, especially if I'm a miner and know what I'm doing. So, some of the Pontypridd tunnellers. The recruiting office of Pontypridd was in the drill hall just off of Broadway. The recruiting office there, this was the headquarters of the 5th Battalion the Welsh Regiment, which had only just been formed just after the start of the First World War in August 1914. There's a list of the Pontypridd towers. The ones in black are the ones where the killed in action or died of their wounds. Half of those. Total of 34 miners from Pontypridd were then joined the Royal Engineer Tunneling Companies. Half of them, of course, 17 paid the ultimate sacrifice. Total of 22 miners enlisted at Pontypridd directly, with the remaining enlisting elsewhere or enlisting in the field. Now, lots of the Welsh regiments were recruited from mining communities. So a missive went out to the commanding officers, release some of your infantry, former miners, and get them into these tunneling companies. But of course, I'm on 6 shillings a day, I'm going to go, and I? And that was quite successful. And there's quite a lot gone from South Wales Borderers, Welsh Regiment, whatever, and enlisted in the field while they're up there into the tunnelling companies, either a tunneler or a tunneler's mate. Either way, they were paid much better than what they were having as an infantryman. It's interesting when you look at the details of some of these tunnelers. Lots of them, families, came from England. You know, they came into the coalfield when the coalfield was booming, of course, looking for work. And there's quite a number, high proportion coming from there. The age range of the miners from Pontypridd is interesting. 6 are over 40. 2 of them are 45. And the oldest is over 48. He's far too old for the army, ordinarily, but he's good enough to become a tanner. That's how important the tunnelers were to the war effort. You know, they wanted experienced miners that knew what they were doing. They didn't want to be told what to do, they had to know what they were doing. Most were in their late 20s or 30s, again, experienced miners. The youngest was only 16. He obviously lied about his age. He joined up straight away. 16, probably a big lad. And the recruiting sergeant was saying, "You're a big lad, I'm sure you're 19. And look the other way. He was in there for 3 years, he was killed when he was 19. He was only 19 when he was killed. And he's been at it for 3 years. The oldest tunneler, well, Sir Francis O'Neill was born in Liverpool, of Irish extraction, no doubt. He married his wife in Prendergast in Haverfordwest, so he moved about a bit. He moved to Pontypridd around 1910 and lived in Coedpen Mine Road in Norton Bridge with a young family and worked as a miner. He later moved to Groeg Helba in Taff. He enlisted at Cardiff. Don't know why he went to Cardiff. 26th of February 1916. Stating his age was 39. He was a few years older than that. But he wanted to make sure he got in. And this is quite common. On the 23rd of August 1918, he was discharged as he no longer physically fit for war service after serving as a tunneler. His army records then show he was actually 48 years and 5 months. And that's quite old for really active service. So they pensioned him off from the army. His wife died on 9th of October 1918, just before the end of the war. But he died when he was 74. So he lasted pretty well, really. So that's one example of the youngest one. Sapper Alfred Thomas Copp, born in Forest. He was the eldest of 5 children, and like his father, worked as a miner. Now, he'd been doing that since he was 13, 14 years old. He enlisted at Tanddaearol, 3rd December 1915. Stating his age was 19, he was actually 60. He originally served in the 5th Battalion, the Welsh Regiment, formed at Tanddaearol in August 1940. Another one transferred in the field to the tunnelling companies. He died of his wounds on the 1st October 1918, aged 90. He was 19 by then. And it's commemorated at Lynch Tanddaearol military ceremony. The oldest surviving tunneler, this is a strange one as well. Sabbath William Selwyn Jones. There he is. Born in Cardiff, worked as a miner. So he must have worked in Tanddaearol or Abertridge or St. Gennydd, that's the nearest one to Cardiff. But he actually lived in Splot. On the 2nd of June, aged 20, working as a collier. He married his wife, Elizabeth. On 11th of December 1915, he enlisted at Tanddaearol, directly into the 254th Tunnelling Company. Now, this is the one with the most Welsh people in it. There was never a Welsh tunnelling company, but they were littered all over with the Welshmen. By 1913, he was residing in Grand Avenue in Neely, in Cardiff. Then I found him again in May 1977, living in Cowbridge. He's there, and it's a lovely article in the local paper. He was very much into darts, his prowess in the dartboard. And he was 83 and he was still playing darts. And he died when he was 86, 3 years later. So, despite all his war service, what he'd been through, he had a ripe old age. Right, that's a flavour of some of them. Let's look at some of the work of the tunnelling companies. They were only out of a week's basic training. They were, when you see an officer, go like that, salute, and that was the equipment. They would have nothing much else at all, because they wanted them for their tunnelling expertise, and not for the thing. They were quite lax from a military sport. A sergeant major would have a fit, I'm sure, with some of the tunnelling companies and how they behave and all the rest of it. So within a matter of days, they impromptu today, and over in France on Monday, and I'm in the trenches on Tuesday. That's how quick it was. They'd be finding themselves in a dark, damp, claustrophobic tunnel, working in the most arduous and dangerous condition. Travelling to their work at the front line, they were also exposed to artillery, infantry, and sniper fire. So you had all what the normal infantry would be exposed to, they would be exposed to as well. And they had a lot more to contend with on the ground, of course. Tonnage occupies in offensive and defensive mining, involved in the placing and maintaining of mines under enemy lines, as well as other underground work, construction of deep dugout for troop accommodation, the digging of subways, saps, a narrow trench dug to approach enemy trenches, cable trenches, you name it, anything you wanted digging, they would be doing. And they'd be digging under the Germans. There's another example I have. Simple thing again. So how did they dig these tunnels? Well, one way of doing it was clay kicking. Flanders, if you like, two geological different things. There's clay, fairly easy to tunnel, and further south there's chalk, which is more difficult. This is called clay kicking, where the tunneler would be on that plank there or against some sandbags, and he'd be pushing a tool, a spade shaped like that, pushing with his feet. So he'd take a piece of that clay out, then another one would be lying down beside him, taking that lump, putting it in a sandbag, and passing it back to another one. And there'd be two more, putting that cart, which is a wooden wheels, wooden track, so it don't make any noise. Because when you're digging tunnels underground, you want to do it very, very quietly. So the Germans will hear you. And the other way around. So that was one way of doing it. And I could do that in some of the trench where there was clay. So, sometimes you had to go through running sand, quicksand, water, whatever, and you would do tubbing, it's called, which is sectional pieces of steel bolted together and sunk down. So you get through that quicksand or whatever it was. The Germans never did that. They said, oh, you can't tunnel over there, Tommy, and they used to have a go at each other about it. But we did, because if you use that tunneling as a shield, you could get through that bad ground to do that. Well, it's a drawing I put together. It's not just one tunnel we're talking about, it's an arrangement of tunnels. The two top ones there are called fighting tunnels. Now the idea of those is you're listening for the Germans. Right at the end of them, you've got listening posts. So you've got somebody with really good hearing, listening. I'll tell you a tale. When I was an apprentice many years ago in the colliery, I went to an old part of the district of the mine. And when I went there, I could hear this rumble. And I thought, God, what on earth is that? And it was just in the distance. So I got to the end where the mine official was, and I said, what's that noise down there? Oh, that's the coal cutter going up and down on the next colliery, which is working the seam above, but you could hear it quite distinctly. So sound does travel underground. This is interesting by here. This is where a mine is going to be placed. The chamber, the tunnel will be opened up into a chamber half the size of this room and packed with explosive, which is photographs of that later on. They'll be wired back with wires to the detonator, and then you'll have tamping, which is sandbags. So it wouldn't blow back, it would blow up. What's the idea of that? Yeah, well, of course all this had to be done clandestinely. Couldn't be seen to be doing any of this, because otherwise you could just open the artillery and destroy everything. So everything had to be done silently and quietly and out of the way. You'd have aerial reconnaissance, of course. The German aircraft would up looking, and most of the time the Germans would be on higher ground and they could see what you're doing. So it all had to be very secret. No man's land over here, and that's where we go. So initially, they listened, see what they could do. Now can you imagine, there's a bombardment going on up above. Did I hear German tunneling then, or was it the bombardment? It's a fine thing. It didn't always get it right. And then later on we had an instrument called a geophone. They could use that very successfully with his earphones, and by means of triangulation they could pinpoint exactly where that channel was. Because the Germans were doing exactly the same thing. So some of the working conditions, right? They constantly work in extreme dangerous, potentially fatal conditions. Tunnels were building it quite a way out the way, back in a base camp, quite a way away. So they had to walk to work, not like walking to the pit, but walk to where the place they were, still front line, and did have all the normal tribulations to put up with. When they got on the ground, of course, they faced many more threats. Entombment, that was a constant threat. Obliteration, blown to smithereens. Health problems, brought about by the workload, working environment and a poor air quality. There was even the risk of drowning, because some of these were waterlogged in the town, as well as potential hand-to-hand conflict, when some tunnels went into the enemy's tunnels as well. The biggest killer, of course, was actually gas poisoning, like carbon monoxide. An invisible, odourless, tasteless substance that was naturally produced by every explosive action. Even the firing of simple rifle bullets produced carbon monoxide. After an underground explosion, however, it is trapped. It gets into the strata, into the tunnel, into the geology. First indication of that, the miner's friend. Canary, there. 2 minutes, he'd be off his perch. So it was an early warning system. Somebody would, human being, 2 hours, just about, you could put 2 hours, and then he'd be dead. So that was really early warning system. Not called a miner's friend for nothing. So if he's off his perch, they're there. And pretty quick. The miners all want to cope with difficult circumstances when they entered the mining tunnels. Often the tunnels were dark, small and flooded with water. There's loads of photographs of them working in water. To keep out the cold, a regular, generous supply of rum was used. So it wasn't only the Navy that was getting the rum, the tunnel as well. And that was a lifesaver really for them. Look forward to a good ton of rum. Heavy shift there. Working in cold, cramped, wet conditions, miners worked in teams of 5. One digging, one bagging, one passing it back onto the trolley, 2 changing it away. The teams of 5 and 8-hour shifts with 16 hours off, although that could vary a little bit depending on the task in hand, of course. Miners were also prone to high rates of illness and disease, and quite a few of the concrete tunnels had some of these diseases, and they were pensioned off from the army. Nephritis, inflammation of the kidneys, myalgia, or polymyalgia as well, muscle action and pain, nystagmus, or stagmus as the miners call it, eye condition working in poor light, rheumatism, drinking water, hepatitis, trench foot, another ailments included trench disease, bronchitis, gas poisoning, phthisis or tuberculosis was another problem, all of course exacerbated by fatigue, working in these conditions, day in, day out. Now, I've detected a German tunnel. So what they do about it? Right. The guy at the end there, he's got an earth auger. He's drilling a hole, a cylindrical hole, towards that German trench. The officer there is waiting for these 2 men to come up with a camouflage, like a bit of a drain pipe, with a charge on the end wired back. They'd put that through that hole. The officer would, who was charged, they'd retire to a safe place, and they'd blow that tunnel in, German tunnel in. Of course, they were doing exactly the same thing. So that was in the back of your mind all the time. You could get blown to Kingdom Come any moment. So it's definitely a case of getting your retaliation in first. They're very organised tunnelling companies. They would have a mine rescue team stationed further back who would be looking after a few of the tunnelling companies. And they'd have all the equipment, breathing equipment and everything else there. And the tunnellers, still got the canaries there. And then each tunnelling company would have its own mine rescue station. And hanging on the wall there, a proto breathing apparatus. Now that can give you about 2 hours breathing in these noxious conditions. You'd have to get out after that then. This is the miner going down. They know there's something going on down below. They know there's carbon monoxide there. He's going down prepared with his proto breathing apparatus on. So I found a couple of nice photographs that perhaps help to explain in illustrative ways what it was like for these tunnellers. They're taken from an old Australian film that was done 2 years ago. But it captures what they must be going through. This is a youngster here. He looks actually petrified. He's probably heard Germans coming. Oh. This is an officer. He's got a geophone. He's listening to pick up the sounds of German tunnel. I don't know what the guy doing next to him is. He's sharpening his bayonet there, ready to go, not to meet the Germans probably, I don't know. Yeah, that's quite a bright flame on that thing as well. The ventilation is quite good there, obviously. Again. And there's the canary. He's still on his perch, so he's all right. You know, keep a wary eye on him all the time. You know, if you've got your proto breathing apparatus on, you keep an eye on him, or somebody is, all the time. It's quite interesting, some of the tunnelling companies, if they fell off their perch 3 times, they'd pension them off. Just like that. You know, they've got a high metabolic rate, so they don't take them much, a couple of minutes and they're gone. They were up and on their perch with their beak against the bars of the cage, and they start jumping about like that, and then they're off. So as soon as they start doing that, they give them a whiff of oxygen and get them out, you know, on the recover. Now these 2 guys got a casualty done with there. They've taken their proto breathing apparatus off, because it's very restrictive as well, because they've got a nose clip on, they've got things not very good to work with, but if it saves your life, so be it now. Well, they're about to blow a camouflage, one of those mines, the mine I talked about. They're going back now, they're going to blow it. I can't read the call. And his face. Now this is a monal explosive in what looks like, remember the old biscuit tins years ago? Trying to keep it dry, keep it away from the damp and thing. This is a chamber, the end of a tunnel, half the size of this room, packed from floor to ceiling with this ammonia. It's a deadly explosive, very, very powerful explosive. So you've done all that, you wired it all back, you can blow it with a charger, and then you put sandbags so it blows it up rather than back on into the tunnel. This rather tatty and crumpled image was found by a historian in a book on World War I Calon some years ago. Nothing on it, but the background is consistent with the Somme, photographs of the Somme. Those are tenements. There are to get everything else. They're all tenements. Some of them, the look of hard, tough life on their faces, aren't they? Some of those. Who they are, nobody will ever know, probably. We never know. But they were typical of the sort of men that fought the underground subterranean war and the Somme. Older, tougher, and used to hard physical labour. And that's etched in their faces. The tunnel's finest hour. Tunnel operation reached their zenith on the 7th of June 1917, when British exploded 19 mines containing 600 tons of high explosive below Messines Ridge, near Ypres in Flanders in Belgium. Messines Ridge had been a scourge of the British Army for years. The Germans had occupied the ridge almost from day one of the war. High ground gives advantage. And the only way to get them out of there was to blow it. That's exactly what they did. In 19, they weren't all blown at the same time. There was a couple of seconds delay, Rhyfel, boom, 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 came out of the ridge of mountain, and that was happening. Some of the blasts was considered the loudest man-made noise in history up to that day. The 19 mines killed an estimated 10,000 Germans in one go, with thousands more taken prisoner, deafened, and too shocked to fight anymore. Devastated. It took them 18 months to do that, man. Tunneling secretly underground. But it was huge. Even Lloyd George heard it in Downing Street. Somebody said they heard it in Dublin as well, I don't know about that. But Lloyd George heard it anyway. It's in the paper, I got it right now. But terrific though. Some historians argue this is the start of the end of the war. There's a lot more to go after that, man. The end of 1917, the front line began to move. So quickly there was no time for more extensive tunneling. Log jumps, stalemate like it, gone. The bloodiest of all the battles was effectively over. As the need for strictly tunneling companies disappeared, they were doing all sorts of other things then. Occupied road bridge building, constructing dugouts, neutralizing booby traps, and other enemy ordnance. These were highly dangerous activities in themselves that caused as many casualties as digging the tunnels. A number of the tunnels upon the Prix were wounded, whilst on active service and were initially treated in field hospitals on the front or transferred home for treatment via specialist hospital trains like this one here. A total of 17 of the tunnellers from the Prix who paid the supreme sacrifice. Their next of kin would have been informed by telegram and would also have received the World War I death plaque. Great big thing, commonly referred to as the death penny, with their name inscribed on it, together with a message from the King, George V, and also a commemorative scroll. So, the end of the war, return home. 5:12 a.m. on November the 11th, 1918, the armistice with its 35 terms was signed in Marshall Park railway carriage in the forest of Compiègne in France. The First World War officially ended on the 11th of November 1918 at 11 AM. However, many of the soldiers, including the tunnelers, were employed on vital work and were not finally discharged until 1919. Notwithstanding that, of course, the long wait for demobilisation caused a great deal of resentment. Notwithstanding, they want to get home. The war's over. When hostilities finally ended on November the 11th, it left 17 million dead and 25 million wounded. It also destroyed 4 empires: German Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Ottoman Empire, and the Romanovs, of course. A changed world. Eventually, all of them would return home, free to try and pick up the elusive traces of their civilian lives. Too much changed. The world had changed. While they were away, they had changed. As thousands flooded the employment market, many men found it very difficult to get work. Millions of men returned home from the war to their homes, families, and girlfriends. Most coped well against all the odds and managed to live reasonably happy and contented lives. Yet many men found themselves alone in the crowd. No one had really defined the nature of combat fatigue or post-traumatic stress disorder then, and there was little psychological help available. Some soldiers back from the front had simply seen too much, experienced too many horrors to go quietly into the tranquility of civilian life. Most were former miners who survived the war and were in reasonable fit state of health on discharge returned to the pit where they were previously employed, or at least they tried to. Unemployment, poverty and disputes ravaged coalfield communities. Yet again, during the early 1920s, paradoxically, at a time when war memorials and rolls of honour were being unveiled, and war memorial parks like this opened, 1923. For those returned to work after a few days' leave, it is difficult to imagine their feeling when leaving their home and making their way through the familiar streets to work in the colliery once again. They would surely have had mixed feelings, difficult to understand. Arriving at the pit head, they would have mixed with fellow travellers and other returning soldiers, pre-war mining friends who had not gone to war, the now young men who were just boys when they left for war, and strangers who had joined the coal industry, perhaps unfairly, judged to have been done so to avoid military service. There's some truth in that to a point. So a land fit for heroes. Well, 12 days after the armistice was declared on 11th November, the Prime Minister David Lloyd George promised that his government would make Britain a fit country for heroes to live in. Inspiring words, of course, but like many political promises, much harder to turn into reality. The actions of the government after the war, well, seem particularly callous. I'll give a couple of examples. It would appear that some of the widows of the Ponsonby Tunneler had a great struggle to claim their rightful pension. The widow of Sapper George Henry Weir, Charlotte, she was one of them. and she even had to pay for the inscription on his headstone. Ever remembered by wife and 8 surviving children. Other tunnellers who were awarded a pension for their injuries or ill health as a result of their war service also found their pension reduced or withdrawn altogether. Nothing, in my mind, that evokes the time better than these 2 posters. They were commissioned by the Labour Party just after the war, and they were drawn by Gerald Spencer Priest in 1923. He'd been an official war artist during the First World War, and he took a commission later in the war as well, and he won the Military Cross at the Battle of Passchendaele. So he'd certainly seen the horrors of the war. Yesterday, the trenches. Today, unemployed. And, you know, communities like Pontypridd and Valley community must have been let down, so let down. The depression was catastrophic for a community that relied entirely on coal extraction. Wages plummeted, miners were laid off, with unemployment in Wales rising to over 25% and even 40% in some areas. During 1921 and 1926, 240 mines in South Wales were closed, and the number of miners fell from 270,000 to 130,000. The impact of the Depression decimated every facet of life in the coalfield, resulting in 3 hunger marches from South Wales to London in 1927, 34 and 36. Right, let's have a look at draw some conclusions from it all. The Pontypridd Roll of Honour commemorates 822 servicemen who paid the supreme sacrifice in the First World War, including 12 of the tunnellers. Some of the others commemorated elsewhere. They also commemorated 12 Commonwealth grave cemeteries in Europe as well. And there's a couple of them, few of them there, and some more there. It took until 2010 before a tunneller's memorial was erected to recognise their thing. This was done at a place called Gorllewin. And the tunnel there is 3 foot circular. That's the size of a shaft going down into the mine. 4 foot tall, 2 foot across the top there. That's the size of an average tunnel. T was their emblem on the thing for tunnellers. And if you look through there, there's the site of you can see the top where the shaft was, where the VC was one. Tunnellers. There wasn't a lot of medals done by tunnellers because it was all very, very quiet. You know, people think about that. General Haig, the challenge before the tunnels was truly enormous. Germany had the upper hand to begin with, no question about that. We were playing catch up for quite a while. However, the miners with limited military training can be thought of as civilian soldiers. They had no spit and polish, nothing like that. They rose to the huge challenge which confronted them. They very much trusted orders given to them by the military superior, with evidence to prove that they more than fulfilled the set task. So General Haig says, no better praise for their numerous contributions in the war effort can be more succinctly noted than by the Field Marshal Douglas Haig, Commander of the Rifle. The tunnelling companies were still maintain their superiority over the enemy of the ground, thus safeguarding their comrades in the trenches. Their skill, enterprise and courage have been remarkable. The Tanddaearol's critical clandestine role in the First World War has been overlooked until recently. Although heroes of obscurity, with their names featured only marginally on the great lists of dead, wounded and missing, their contribution to the Service War was integral and vital. The Tanddaearol, with their hidden and selfless endeavours, operated in the most secret, personal and savage battlefield of the war, the battlefield beneath no man's land. Few in the service knew what was going on, the horrific details of the Tanddaearol's work, and the secret, silent, claustrophobic conflict was a barbaric struggle that raged day and night for almost 2.5 years, and one which generated mental and physical stresses often far beyond some of those by the infantry in the trenches. He's working in chalk there, and sometimes they have to put sunglasses on because the candlelight would bounce off the chalk and they end up with snow blindness. So he triggered extraordinary feats of initiation, inventive engineering, creativity, human endeavour, and above all else courage, often by men who were too old to take part in the trench war above. Theirs was a different form of heroism and sacrifice. Their war, one which was almost divorced from the conflict on the surface, and indeed from the army itself. They seemed to be left to their own devices. The miners from Portofino who became Tanddaearol's, burrowing under no man's land on the western front, were a very special breed of men. Working in the most arduous conditions, half of them paid the supreme taxes, while many others suffered the deleterious effects of their war service. We should all be very proud of them and their achievements in the secret underground war. The Tanddaearol who played part in the First World War have now all passed away, of course. It has taken over a century for the achievements of the Pontypridd miners who served in the tunneling companies to be documented in some way. It should be an enormous regret they died without being publicly afforded the recognition of other units of the war. Theirs was a unique and extraordinary story, and richly deserves to be told. We owe a great deal of debt to all our service personnel, of course, who have given their lives in the cause of freedom. And perhaps we should say, Robert Williams' poem, they shall grow not old, as they that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Now, I am determined to continue my research into the miners of Pontypridd who joined the tunneling companies in the First World War. They made such a valuable contribution in the war effort in the most appalling conditions. Their role has been largely overlooked or unknown. Their story needs to be brought to a wider audience. I'm pleased so many were turned up today. And to see their contribution published. And it's nearly ready, 80% of it's done. I'm still looking for those elusive few. But I'm determined to do it justice and finish the other few as well. The heroism deserve it, nothing less, is it? So I will get there. I should like to thank Alice at the back there, and the team at Tanddaearol War Memorial Park for hosting this event. It's such a big subject, it really is. It's difficult what to put in and what to leave out.